Hello, my name is Denis Zhadiaiev. Uh, you can call me Denis from Dnipro. In scientific communities, it's much easier to pronounce than my surname, Zhadiaiev. So, I'm going to present you my talk, my paper, or rather my presentation, not paper, which is called Why Time is a Primary Category in Alfred Whitehead's Cosmology and What it Means for Perception, Ethics, Education, and Aesthetics Today. Sorry for such a long title, but I could not do that better than this. Okay, so, a few words about me. I'm from Dnipro University of Technology, one of the most popular university and the oldest university in central Ukraine. And my primary education and current education is rather humanitarian and learning humanities and social sciences. But I had some reasons to come to technological university because, according to the talk I'm presenting today and to my beliefs, I think that the truth has rather objective status, not subjective. So technology and technological sciences, they also start from this point of view. There are not much clashes between engineers like clashes between philosophers. Philosophers not very understand each other very well. Otherwise, they are not philosophers, by the way. But the team of engineers, despite their preferences or beliefs, they just doing experiment and find out which works the best, regardless the personal will, personal beliefs, opinions, and so on. So this is what attracts me in philosophy. I also believe that philosophical truths and science and ideas, they have rather sort of objective status. It's a very problematic term, objective, and we will be talking about that today. Actually, there are no such a thing like objects. There are rather events. I will try to explain you in terms of category of time, and you will see. Maybe you will find something. You will find out it's very interesting. I'll try to keep my talk a little bit more comfortable for general public than for specific sort of nerds in academic philosophy. And of course, after this presentation, you can ask me some questions. My talk will be divided into four main parts. Time and process philosophy, microgenesis, examples from astrophysics, and first of all, examples in time management, with the skill what we learn today in digital era and why it's important, especially in line of the next category such as creativity. Also, the second part will be time and ethics, good as the right season. Ethics. Can goodness be seasonal? Or what's the point? We'll discuss it later. It also refers to the category of time. The part number 3 is time and education, while learning is not downloading. So I will try to explain that education is not just measured in time by hours, by minutes. No, it's not. It should not be scheduled. It's something different. It's just not amount of quantity. It's rather quality, and quality is defined not just by time, but the rhythm as a definition for time. It's another very complex subject, but I will try to give you some hints, some quotations, and maybe you'll find this interesting thought to think on your own. When you are comfortable with that, you can develop your own thoughts and maybe reflect in your own papers and other talks. Okay, and the fourth part will be dedicated to time and art. Why rhythm might be more influencing than visual art. The point of view of Alfred Whitehead, the author of so-called process philosophy or philosophy of organism. Another title for this direction in philosophy is just cellular theory of perception. But this title is less common, so for the sake of brevity, we will call it process philosophy or philosophy of organism, where time will be considered to be as one of the most important categories. Is there such a thing like time, or maybe it's just another illusion? There are lots of investigations, especially in neurology, about this concept, and it's another, kind of riddle for human being, or what character time has. Of course, we feel time in different states. If I'm in love and I'm waiting the minute when I meet my beloved one, of course time hangs heavily, right? Or it's in English, if I properly use English, it spans, it's stretches, right? And on the other hand, we feel time in our dream. We have different perception of time, quite actually no feeling of time whatsoever during the dream. That's why we may mess the cause and effect during the sleep, and but still, and of course, time in childhood and time in real life in adult age, of course, passes differently. So this is a real thing, but it has different aspects, characters, depending on our perception of it. So the most important part when we're talking about category of time is our perception of time. That's the crucial point. One of my favorite quotation when I found out in the book The Self-Embodying Mind, written by Jason Brown, he quotes another author and reminds that, well, such a funny thing. We always want to be eternal. That's in our nature. We believe in eternity of the soul. We believe in eternal life. It's our natural belief, I would say. And but on the other hand, instead, after death or after life, no matter what to say, anyway, after our life, we become, instead of eternal, we become ubiquitous. We become everywhere because our atoms and molecules scattered around the universe. That's the problem. That's an irony of human being. I will say it's metaphysical joke, but still I found it very interesting. And okay, so Alfred North Whitehead is British American mathematician, logician. He was a student of Cambridge. He moved to the United States of America possibly because of the British traditionalism and his personal views on being as a process, existence as a process, and existence becoming, which is kind of has a fluid nature. Of course, it may not go into the framework of any traditionalism. This is possibly one of the main point why he mentioned it in his book Adventure of Ideas. He said that Great Britain and United States of America are still following the same models, which is Egyptian and ancient Greek model, where Great Britain, with its traditionalism, follows the paradigm of sort of geometric hierarchy, which was very popular in ancient Egypt, sort of order, hierarchy, and Greeks didn't follow that model. They always love to travel. They always want to meet strangers. They want to talk to strangers. Entrepreneurship, which was inherent in their blood, and this is also signs of a model that United States of America follow it. So we are not that far from our ideas, from the categories of these beliefs of this world, So what does it mean? That means that categories per se, categories as sort of not just a terminology or not just notions. These are ultimate principles, or we still may say notions, concepts that has extremely large content. For instance, if I say quantity, it has much more wider content than say the term red or table, right? Because we have a limited amount of tables imagined or shades of the red color. But if we say quantity, of course we can enormously much more things can consider under that term. The same with quality, the same with time, the same with space, right? So it's the most general concepts. Normally they are going in pair, such as quality and quantity, or cause and effect. These are also categories. If we speak about the cultures, Western and Eastern, then of course perception of time is quite different, and that's why today, in 21st century, we may find out in business and economic models, Western countries as developers, inventors, those who create ideas, and the Asian world is rather like reproductions because of the not I will not say they are not creative, they're creative, but it's not the dominant part of their world outlook. They rather reproduce known things, not invent. And how it can be related to the category of time? Well, because in Asian culture, time is supposed to be circular, right? So because see, it's seasonal change, right? Like seasons. Immanuel Kant also adds that if we consider progress as a one state of thing, which overcome it in quality or in quantity by another state of thing, and qualify it as better to such and such extent that previous period of time, then of course we can suppose that that next, which is better, is also will provoke another state of thing which is even more better, and so on and so on. And if it's endless, then any further state of things, each next state of thing, is doomed to be as outdated. And if we understand that each and every next state of thing, no matter how advanced it will be, it still be outdated, then progress has no meaning. So even Western countries also realize that ambiguity, but still maybe influenced by Christian culture, where we know that not only Christian, it's also, well, mostly Christian, where we know that there was a beginning of the world, right? The period of Genesis, then primordial sin, right? Cardinal sin. Then it's if I properly use English, I guess I properly use it. And then we had time when Jesus Christ came in, and then it was another point in this line of time, and then it's supposed to be a sort of doomsday. So there is beginning, there is an end, so it's linear. Michel Foucault, French philosopher, also adds that it also reflects these two types of our understanding of time, Western and Eastern, also reflects in our writing, because in European tradition, also in Arabic, by the way, but it's vice versa, from right to the left, we writing from left to the right. It's sort of line A, B, C, D, and so on. But in Asian culture, they have hieroglyphs, right? Where each hieroglyph is sort of event, right? Not just beginning and the end. It's just event as it is. Maybe it's very interesting thought. I would not say that hieroglyphs still not have beginning and ending. Okay, again, to warm up, just a few thoughts. One of the interesting thoughts of Alfred and Whitehead is that there is no such a thing like natural laws. There are only temporary habits of nature. It's written in Dialogues of Alfred and Whitehead, written by Lucien Price and published in 1954. And what does it mean? There are no natural laws, there are only temporary habits of nature. Well, that means that it's not that we are following Schopenhauer model of thought, where only will dictates what is real and what is not real. No, that means that even from a point of view of physics and astrophysics and biology, our universe, as we know it, is shown to us only under such and such perspective, very limited. And in comparison to geological time, in comparison to the time that lasts in the universe, well, our lives are just very blink of an eye, It's very short. And having such a short known history to us, we may not call natural laws as absolute. So that means that why he says that? Well, because here he clarifies that his position is quite different from Newtonian position. Why Isaac Newton developed his knowledge of physics? Well, because it's supposed to be that they are revealing a godlike nature. Since natural laws such as gravity is eternal, then it's very close to the God, to the absolute. Everything because everything that is related to the eternity, not to the passage of time. So everything that relates to eternity is rather has supreme nature or close to the God. That's why he developed his physics. Also, it was very important for that epoch because, well, when you claim or and have an evidence to prove, to demonstrate mathematically some regularities that cannot be denied, that means that knowledge is really power, as Francis Bacon says, and also that just personal will is just a whimsical part of our nature. So it should be neglected, and we should focus on something which is not changed. So Isaac Newton did great job and said the very important things for his epoch, which also relevant to the date. But with the invention of special relativity, theory of special relativity, and by the way, Alfred not Whitehead has different view on this theory. He said that the universe, we don't have evidence that the universe has uniform nature. That means that speed of light can be different in that. This is the main point where he diverged from the Einsteinian model. And well, he said that even laws of the universe, as natural laws, which are uniform and eternal, we don't have still evidence that they are really eternal. That doesn't mean that they are changing constantly. No, that means that we know them only from not only our perspective as we see it in visual terms, in terms of how we observe them, right? But in terms of our knowledge that we have, that we collected within very, very limited period of time. So we should be, if we want to be objective, if we want to be unbiased as a species, we have to understand that we are very, very young creatures in the universe, if we aim to talk about what universe really is. And another example, maybe more evident, we understand rocks and cliffs as something unmovable, right? Something which are not alive because they are not moving, they are not hunting, right? So what sort of life there in the rocks and cliffs? Well, in terms of Whitehead, there is such a thing like geological time, not only our time, right, but geological time. And in terms of geological time, cliffs and rocks, even continents, are moving constantly, actually. And one of our teachers, by the way, at my university, when I've been a student, he also explained us that try to consider the Earth upside down with its continents, and you will find out that the continents reminds petals of the flower, and they also moving like petals, by the way. It's not like, possibly the concept of Pangea, right? It's very popular. You can find out more on the internet, on the web. So there was initially one continent that split into different other continents. So there is no such a thing. We have no evidence to say that there are such thing like a living world and not living world. Because again, even cliffs and rocks, in terms of higher and larger scales, they are also movable as well, as if they are behaving purposefully, not just having eyes, right? They don't need eyes as we do have. And that doesn't mean that if they don't have eyes, they are not alive, right? Or if they don't have lungs, they are not alive. No, that the question is quite different. We should not consider them in terms of our constitution of our bodies, right? They just don't need eyes and don't need lungs, like some other species. They don't need some features that we have, right? Okay, now let's move on. Why, among other categories, time is the most important today in digital era? Well, quite obvious. Time management. It's one of the key skills after 2025, and it's already known on the web for the last 10 or even 15 years, I guess. No, well, maybe 10 at least, that's for sure. This is what talks are going about in World Economic Forum. And why it's important? Well, because today in digital era, our work is not measured in a amount of pieces we create, right? Or amount of mass or kilograms, we move back and forth from place A to place B, right? So if we are living in digital era, one of the most important thing for us is just creativity, to be original, to do something that artificial intelligence is not able to do. And to be creative means to be in good shape, right? In good mental shape, right? In order to, so if you are working hours and only hours, right? If you consider hours as a main gauge to measure your activity, then of course you may find out that your work and result of your work in early morning hours and at late evening hours can be quite different. And of course, 2 hours working at night may be far from 2 hours working in the morning or during the day in terms of productivity. Sometimes even 20 minutes a day in digital era, when it's supposed to be that we are trying to write better email, you maybe write much better email for 20 minutes than thinking about that for 4 hours during the night. So what does it mean? Well, that means that time is feeling quite differently. It also involves our perception of the world and our inner condition. How do we feel ourselves? And this is not only emotional, you know. It's still it's objective, and it's not about what we want, what we don't want. It's objective, and our condition is also objective. So that means that we have to follow circadian rhythms, and if we are healthy enough and following that rhythm, then of course we will be more productive. And the more we are productive, the more we are creative, the more we're successful, the more we are alive, the more we give to others. At least a market economic model supposes that. We are not claiming that's absolutely correct answer. No, at least the rules of this game known to us, they tell us this thing. And of course, if we are working hard and much more hours than our competitors, that means that yes, we may be more productive today, tomorrow, but it's not for sure that we will be productive the day after tomorrow or after the month, or maybe 10 years later we will just give up. We will be successful for some period of time, but then we will fall into depression because of burnout, right? So if we are not able to use our time properly, including how do we feel ourselves, our inner condition, not only what we are working with, but our inner condition, that means that in a long run, we will be, kind of losers. It's not only about to be or not to be a loser. It's just about normal existence, right? It's not only about money and success. Again, it's just about quality of life. And sometimes the short-term goals overcome. People think that we have to achieve our goal while it's possible and work more and more, and then they fall into that trap where they are maybe successful but they are not happy, and then later they are not healthy. So time management is very important. So the bottom line is that creativity refers to cognition, not mechanical operations from A to B, right? It's not just from like driving car from A to B, from B to C, right? The point on the map. No, it's just something that involves our perception of this world. And perception of the world greatly depends upon our feeling of time and our rhythms, inner rhythms. And sometimes creativity depends, the successful creativity depends not only just skills we developed. It's also important, but sometimes the most creative moments, not those which involved hard work, but good sleep, right? That's also true. The different perception of time, by the way. How does it work? Well, this is another theory. I call it the theory of the balance, but these are further researches, further developments, and we will focus today. We will focus on time only, which is not less interesting. I think it's even more interesting. So, what Whitehead said in a previous century, what could be used today as a sort of prophecy or predictions. Uh, Quotation mark. Life is essentially periodic. It comprises daily periods with their alternation of work and play, of activity and sleep, and seasonal periods. There are also subtler periods of mental growth with their cyclic recurrences, yet always different as we pass from cycle to cycle, though the subordinate stages are reproduced in each cycle. This is taken from his aims of education, and this is where he explains that even young learners, they should follow that periodic um, principle of the learning, because there are such a stage like curiosity, there are some other stages like memorization. You have to memorize something, right? And there are some other stage where you have to forget everything that you memorized and create something. So, because if you're doing only something out of your memory, then you will never create nothing new. You will not create something new, right? That's the problem. Okay, another few thoughts. Quotation mark. The direct measurements of length are only rarely possible in any accuracy. Rivers, houses, forests, mountains, and general irregularities of ground all get in the way. That means that direct measurements, that from A to B, I mean special geometrical measurements, are just simplifications. And there is not such a thing like plane surfaces. If we speak about science and mathematics, we will find out that mathematics is just a simplification for the sake of brevity to some extent, right? Because physics not always meet mathematics. Sometimes they do, but not always. To some extent, they represent each other. Sometimes mathematics can predict physical events that will be yet to be discovered. That's also true. But in limited and certain area of our perception and knowledge, not everywhere. And what does it mean? Well, another quotation may shed more light on that. It's from his Introduction to Mathematics. In a mountainous country, distances are often reckoned in hours. So if you're going over the mountains, it's much comfortable and more accurate to measure your distance in hours, not in meters or miles, right? And kilometers. That means that sometimes time saves special measurements, and this is another point of view where we find out that time is more primordial than special measurements. To make a long story short, I'll just already try to give you the main idea of this presentation. Why time is more primordial to space? Well, because it's supposed that object exists only when it's observed in time. You cannot observe object in space and then find out that time produced out of space. It's rather we already need some time to observe something into space. That doesn't mean that if we are not observing an object, it doesn't exist. No, it's not about things like that. Actually, Whitehead is quite objective, and he claims that things exist beyond our perception of them, such as he mentions the bones of dinosaurs, right? They existed before our consciousness. So our consciousness is not just a guiding force, guiding principle for everything to exist, like existentialist claims that. So that means that first we need time. Time is the essential ingredient, and only then we need space and some other categories, that sort of thing. So object exists in space only if it's observed in time. Time is primordial. Also, what about objects? As you know, Whitehead is not protagonist of the subject-object point of view, which is classical division starting from Aristotle, which is very simple. It's scientific. Today's science also operates such a concept like subject and object. Subject understands object. Our language also subject-object based on subject-object paradigm. That means that we have a noun, we have a adjective, where adjective is just a sort of middle term, right? Or we may say predicate, or object, which prescribe it to the subject or observed by the subject, such as noun. This is a duality, also reflects in our language. But Whitehead says that these illusionary duality. When we are dealing with this world, we are dealing with events rather, not with the objects. Again, because still we need time. Also, our perception of the object greatly depends on how do we feel ourselves. Where the category of time had its place in other paradigms. One of the most important categorical schemes were belonging to Aristotle and Immanuel Kant. I guess Immanuel Kant is one of the most elaborated. Whitehead also has his own development of the categories. He has about 30 categories, but we will not discuss them. Let's just find out where we are now in terms of category of time, where it was and where we are now. So Aristotle had such a category like substance, quantity, quality, qualification, relative, where, when, being in a position, having, doing, being affected. By the way, doing and being affected, one of the most interesting categories in terms of creativity in digital era. I published 2 papers about how do they interact. I call them the category of power, but it's another topic, still worth to be focused on. And the category of time was in his concept of when and where. Where is the space, and when it's a time. Where the category of time was in Kantian scheme. In Critique of Pure Reason, you may find out this famous scheme, which is supposed to be out of composed out of 12 categories. They generalize it by 4 main categories, such as quantity, quality, modality, and relation. Cause and effect. Can cause be an effect related to the category of time? Maybe it hides, the category of time hides somewhere there. Well, if we say that possibility and impossibility has no temporal relationships, unity and plurality not necessarily have temporal relationships, but cause and effect is something closer to here. But still, it has no relation to temporality, because Kant says that, well, cause and effect can exist simultaneously. Theory of relativity says that there are no coexistent or simultaneous events, because we cannot observe or perceive things simultaneously. We can focus only on one or on the another, not on both. And this is one of the most important principles. But on the other hand, cause and effect can exist simultaneously, and it was shown and demonstrated by Immanuel Kant. He said that if we take a pillow, I have a pillow right here, right, and put here, say, a bullet or just a metallic ball, it will create a little pit, right, in here. So that means that a little pit exists simultaneously with the metal ball, and the metal ball is the cause and the pit is an effect, and they exist simultaneously. So there is no time here, by the way. So I wonder how theory of relativity will reply to this question. Maybe you know better. This is the paradox. So was that true that Immanuel Kant was a step ahead of inventors of theory of relativity, or it's quite different? Well, the answer is that theory of relativity considers events on the larger scale, while Immanuel Kant considers them on our so-called macro level, right? Macro level, the level of daily life, things of daily life. That's the difference. So Immanuel Kant actually considers the categories of space and time separately from these 12 categories. But we may find out that time somewhat belongs to the set of categories of quantity, and space to the category of quality. First of all, he says that the category of time as the category, it's algebraic representation of it has algebraic character, and space as a category has a geometric character. Yes, that's for sure. The geometrical figures, they represent special relationships, right? So up to this point, we just did some archaeological investigation into category of time. So, and what happened to the category of space? Well, after Descartes created his famous equations, he reduced the geometrical shapes to the algebraic representations. Or at least, we can say that the category of space can be derivative from the category of time. So, far before, almost 500 years before the theory of relativity, Descartes actually already said that the category of time or algebraic representation is more fundamental than category of space. Because we just have smaller rhythms, we have more opportunity to predict a larger behavior of larger rhythms. So there is no such a thing like order and chaos, but there are perspectives on the time scale where smaller rhythms can estimate or calculate larger rhythms, and even tinier rhythms, which our rhythms cannot calculate properly, and that's why we consider them more chaotic. So it's just a ratio between rhythms. And the rhythm in Whitehead is one of the key characteristic of life as well. So as we started to talk about cliffs and rocks as non-living creatures, actually they also, as we already know, they also have their own they also have their rhythms in terms of geological time. So there is no organic and non-organic nature. There is all alive reality, but with different rhythms, which may seem to us either like live and not living, right? But actually rhythms of larger scale and smaller scales. Consider another paradox. This is from my monograph where I consider the work Concept of Nature, written by Alfred and Whitehead. Analyzing that work, I came to the conclusion that space and time can be represented by two geometrical figures, where time is a circle and space is a sort of square, right? Sort of square. The real world, such as nature, right? Real world nature, it exists on the level of their intersection, time and space, right? Where a thought exists. A thought doesn't exist somewhere in the space, right? It exists in terms of neurology. It exists somewhere else, but not in the space. We cannot find thought in the particular cell of the brain. Yes, we can find out how neurons interact, but we cannot find thought as it is in a group of neurons, right? We cannot find where in neurons we may find. We are not able to find particular neurons that represent the perception and emotions evoked by the red object, or green tree, or smell of incense, right? So that means that thought, according to Descartes, still the category which is res cogita, which is out of the space, somewhere out of the space. We can calculate how many brains we have in the audience, but we cannot calculate how many consciousness we have in the audience, right? And the paradox is the next. Thought exists beyond a category of space. At least it's somewhere in the nature as well. It has some intersection. Nature is in time and in space, but nature is not in thought. Nature is not in thought. It can be perceived by thought. But thought is in time, but not in space. Yes, we are thinking in time, but not in space. According to Blaise Pascal, French physicist, we can embrace by our thought the whole space. That's the merit of the human nature. Such a tiny and fragile creature like human nature in comparison to the whole universe. But we almighty in terms of thought in relation to universe, because universe, according to Blaise Pascal, is not realizing what it is doing to us, but we do realize. Why category of time is important to neurology, to microgenesis, for instance? Sort of theory of cognition, which has some similar perspectives with theory of evolution. According to theory of evolution, the most fit species survive, right? In theory of microgenesis, when we perceive something, we're trying to find out the best category that describes what we perceive, right? I see, for instance, something moving. I associate it with the person, a living creature somewhere on the horizon. But when I come closer, I realize that this is just a bush moving by the wind, right? It was not human being, right, or animal. So my categories are shifting by means of while I am approaching to that object, moving object, and I find out the best category, the most fit to it, right? The same process happened at each millisecond in our existence, in our perception. So we are guessing the proper categories and the best categories, which are those which are fit to our perception. We never perceive objects as they are. We only have a process of perception all the time. The simplest example that John B. Cobb Jr. gives in his glossary is that, for instance, we domesticate a little puppy, a little cub, which is very playful with us, right? And we enjoy this animal, and gradually we understand that this cub is actually growing into a wolf. Initially we thought it was a dog. We associated this animal with the category of dog, and now we have to understand that it's not the dog, it's a wolf, and another category must be applied to the same animal. If it's the same, it's another question, because many cells in that organism already change it. So if we call it object, this animal as an object, it's a very, very simplistic approach, even in terms of biology, right? Not to speak about cognition. So that means that each and every millisecond of our existence, our perceptions are always in change. Yes, we feel relative stability. I have a monitor on my desktop, on my desk, right? And it's still the same monitor. If it's such and such brand, it doesn't mean that tomorrow it will be another brand. No, the question is not in which brand it is, and or it may just be changed into another monitor. No, it's not. The question not about that. The question is that our perception is never identical to the previous perception. It was stated, by the way, not only by Whitehead or contemporary neurologists. It was postulated by Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, German philosopher, who created his monadology, which is very similar to process philosophy, because it contains plurality, perspectiveness, and not just subject-object approach. Okay, so if our perception differs in time, then again, time is sort of different category. And, the process of cognition, considered at the symposium at the University of Silesia in Katowice, I'm borrowing here some material from the article of Maria Pachalska, Portrait of a Scholar, Jason Walter Brown, and they represent the microgenesis represent the cognition like a fountain, right? Where the perception of the real world is just the top of the fountain, and the self that perceives it is at the bottom. But the water, that is to say perception, the process of perception, is going back and forth again and again by the same principle, but always differently. So it's always in change, but still it follows the same principles. By the self, we can consider here such a more simplistic categories like a subject, or more complex neurological categories like a core, or entity, more philosophical category, right? So from entity to the external world, to the objective data, right? Or, well, and for more examples, you can find out that our perception is circular from self to the core, from self to the external world and back, and again and again and again. It's described in the video Poetry and Microgenesis. And this principle is not just principle of the cognition, it's also principle of the evolution and of the existence of the creatures as well, because again it's interaction between opposites as well. So sort of dialectics, but not that dialectics which is very abstract, like Hegelian dialectics. It's more sort of down to the ground and deals with reality, not just with phenomena. Because one of the tasks of neurology is to differentiate illusion from reality. What's the corollary or bottom line we can draw? What's the outcome of all of these thoughts that belong to the first part of our presentation? The next three will be much shorter because they are just applications. So the corollary is that microgenesis, cognition, and physics perception tell us that time as category encompasses cognition and ontology. It's a link to the unity of the world and the self. Also, it says that time is derivative from so-called rhythms that are essential part of any existence, from magnetic waves to the circadian rhythms to the galaxies. So, time and ethics. What Whitehead meant when he said that goodness or good is seasonal. In Process and Reality, you may find out that he wrote that logicians consider it to be their the vocation to find the truth. But the truth, if it relates to perception, to reality, it means that the truth is just something that always belong to the past, even in milliseconds, but already in the past. When I perceive something and realize and find proper category what I'm perceiving, that perceptual data is already in the past. It's not in the present, especially, and of course it's not in the future. That's the major difference. But the better vocation will be to find out where the good is. So we should not always associate truth with the good, like Plato did, but the good is something that drives our action to achieve something. So ideals, they are somewhere in the future. For instance, I hope for the better future for my children, right? Or for humanity as well, for other people. And if I hope for that and following my belief, doing some specific actions to achieve some more justice, more transparency, right? More equality, then I'm driven not by something that was in the perceptual data, but what I have as ideals. And those ideals drive me somewhere from the future. So again, the category of time as past and future also persists here. And another thought of Whitehead in the same work, Process and Reality, he said that insistence on birth at the wrong season is the trick of evil. So the evil is if we insist on birth at the wrong seasons. It doesn't mean birth of human being or any other animal. No, it's a philosophical thought that means that sometimes we want to reduce time to shorter periods or violate some rhythms. And that violation of those rhythms is just one of the conditions where bad things happen. So if there are rhythms all over the universe, starting from the subatomic particles to the galaxies, of course including human beings and its time management and so on, if the rhythms are super crucial parts of our existence, the evil as it is must be characterized as a distortion of the rhythms. Person who is doing harm is not realizing that to some extent he could live in that age which is weaker, whether it's elderly person or child, right? And since it doesn't interact to the equal to himself, to the same rhythms, but negatively impacts some other rhythms, then it's possibly that's the how evil can be described in particular case from the point of view of the rhythm as a primary category. So to make a long story short, I just will say that the violation of rhythms is the evil at all levels, and we can explain many social and political events where that violation of rhythms can be represented by dictatorship, right, or some catastrophic events provoked voluntarily by some parts, right, as again as a wish to violate normal rhythm. So it's not stability, it's not tradition, it's just rhythm, but it can be violated. So something that we are doing, working extra hours, not always give us success. Sometimes they doing even harm to us, right? Not success, not giving success as well. And the third part of our talk, time and education. Why learning is not downloading? Well, time management as timing also was developed by Whitehead to some extent in his aims of education. There are 4 stages in learning process. The stage of romance, where non-systematic knowledge but with vigor and zest takes place. The stage of precision, where facts analyzed, so 10 states of precision. This is just figurative titles, of these stages, but they are very fortunate, I guess, in terms of explanation. So the third stage of generalization, a return to romanticism with added advantage of classical ideas and relevant technique, and it is a so-called Hegelian synthesis. Yes, it's sort of dialectic. The process of education is sort of dialectic, but it starts from non-systematic knowledge. However, that lack of system is driven by the vigor and curiosity, and so it's driven. It's not just rational. Then it must be aided with the precision. We have to aid some analysis, what we've learned, check some facts. Very important. Fact checking is very important today in digital era, right? And the stage of generalization, so it's just philosophical encompassing of what we understood, what we learned, to get the more general picture of what we've learned. So that means that the learning process is not just hours and not just topics. Learning process is a rhythm again, and rhythm is a conditio sine qua non, that is to say, necessary condition for definition of time. And a few quotations from his aims of education. The development of mentality exhibits itself as a rhythm involving an interweaving cycles, the whole process being dominated by greater cycle of the same general character of its minor eddies. Another quotation mark. When you have to put your boots in a trunk, they will stay there until you take them out again. But this is not all the case if you feed a child with the wrong food. End of quotation. So putting the boots in the trunk is the same as download some files into your hard drive, right? But the mind is not a hard drive. Mind needs a rhythmic understanding of what it learned. That's the great difference. And Whitehead already mentioned it in terms of rhythm. So time, rhythm was so much core category, central category, that it still finds its confirmation of its primordial character even today. And another quotation mark. I'm pleading that we shall endeavor to weave in the learner mind a harmony of patterns By coordinating the various elements of instruction into subordinate cycles, each of intrinsic worth for the immediate apprehension of the pupil, we must garner our crops each in its due season. Again, here we find the term season again. Here we are reading and quoting the aims of education, but first we found a rhythm, we found season in terms of ethics, which was used in process and reality, quite different work, cosmology, metaphysical work. So again, he comes back to the concept of season. So there are rhythms, seasons, and due times, circadian rhythms. This is what constitute the being perception as some unity, and this is also a characterization of time as it is. And the last part of our talk is just my time and art. I just want to, for the sake of brevity, to quote you another passage of his dialogues written by Lucian Price. He said that in one page 226, 228, in page 227, 228, mind you, I don't mean to compare our dependency on the two senses, that is to say sight and hearing. Again, quotation mark, mind you, I don't mean to compare our dependency on the two senses, for we are more dependent on sight since we have mobility. But I think we respond more to a solemn sound, to music, or to great bell. It establishes emotion almost instantaneously, and we think about it only later. Organ music much more easily conveys a devotional attitude than visual objects. Your national anthem serves its purpose, and hearing it, I am more moved than I am by sight of your flag. The point I am making is that with the sense of sight, the idea communicates emotion, whereas with sound, the emotion communicates the idea, which is the more direct and therefore more powerful. What does it mean? This quotation means that the music or sound with its rhythmic structure, by the way, sound wave is also a wave, and it's with its amplitude, right, and special rhythm, right, special ratio. And in sound, emotion communicates the idea, so it's primordial, and then idea. But with the sight, it's idea that imposes to our emotion, so it produces emotion, which sometimes is less true or more fake. We can have emotion that always primordial, like perceptual data, like that multiplicity, like that continuity of the objects that we perceive. They always have primordial character because they are that many that at the beginning of our perception, the process of perception, that united into one. And when we hear the sound, music, melody, rhythm, then we are in more natural process of creating idea, because idea is discrete. Idea of justice, idea of beauty, idea of green color, right? That born out of that perceptual data that we perceive, right? So, and again, that's the answer why in aesthetics the rhythmic character is more adequate than visual data. We may say that rhythm may exist in the paintings as well, which is special in space, right? It's supposed to be that the paintings is a spatial sort of art, and music is a temporal sort of art, because music has its beginning and the end, and the paintings has no beginning and the end. It's not condition for healthy marriage or happy marriage when you first know how much money your partner earns, and then you decide to produce emotion that you love that partner, right? So it's sort of fake marriage, right? It's not real marriage, fake love. But when you first have emotion and then you both try to calculate how you earn your living, how that marriage can be sustained, then it's more natural way. So thank you very much. Time passed by very quickly. I think I have to cut out a large part of that video in order to edit it and make it much more shorter. Thank you very much, and thank you for your questions.